Welcome to the next episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today, we talk to Gavin Reynolds. Gavin is a volunteer in rural Georgia and has been at it for the last 7 years. He's a father, husband, former infantry Marine with 2 deployments, graduate of the Georgia Spartan program, 1 bad tour, Georgia smoke diver, and an ultra runner with no real plans of slowing down. He set the bar for what it means to be professional. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the next episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today we have on Gavin Reynolds. The way that this podcast came to be is that Gavin is one of the vigilantes. I've seen him in the Discord several times. And as we talk about different things within that Discord group, things like OBT and smoke diver, and these things come up and people ask kind of how to prep for it and whatnot. And Gavin has responded back, and I didn't know, but he had said, hey, I went through the GSD program. I went through OBT, and which we have a few of those. But then he said that he was also a volunteer. He was a volunteer fireman. I said that has got to be unusual to have a volunteer go through GSD. I'm sure he's not the first one, but it is a rare sight. Most of these guys are paid. So I said, Gavin, you've got to have a story in that brain somewhere. If you ever want to come on the podcast, I'd be honored to have you in. And, a spot opened up. I kind of needed to fill a little gap. He was hesitant to come on. He didn't really want to come on originally, but I said, hey man, can you come pull me out of a bind real quick? And, he graciously accepted, and we were able to squeeze him in today. So he's got a lot to talk about. There's a lot in his brain, a lot of stuff I want to pick his brain about how it operates, because he's done a lot of stuff. But that's how this thing came to be. So we always start this podcast off talking about your backstory, how you got into the fire service, and then we'll start flowing down the list of things. So, Gavin, welcome to the podcast, and let's figure out let's start down your path, my brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Like I said, Gavin Reynolds. I've been in the fire service now for going on about 6 years, 7 years time frame. Volunteer firefighter. Also work EMS part-time. So I guess with the volunteer side of it, I do part-time fire and then also part-time EMS. So I'm actually in A school right now, getting my advanced EMT. Got a full-time job outside of this, working in fleet maintenance in the railroad industry, working from home. So that allows me a lot of the opportunities as far as flexibility in my schedule, as far as working the fire and EMS side, and then also my full-time gig that pays the bills.
Well, let's talk about what got you interested in the volunteer side, because you've been at your full-time job for a long, much longer time, but at some point you decided, hey, let me go poke around with the volunteers. What started that interest?
Yeah, so I always had an obviously an interest in the fire service, especially as a kid. My stepdad was the fire chief of the city that I live in now. And he retired in 2003. So as a little kid, he'd pick me up from school. He was a fire chief, so we got to ride in the fire chief's car, go back to the fire station. So I was a little kid running around the fire station, going down the pole and everything, aggravating all the firefighters that were on duty. So I kind of grew up in the firehouse. So I was very familiar with the, what it was and how it was. So definitely good times as a kid. Basically growing up in a firehouse.
So like I said, it took you a little while to eventually lock into committing to volunteerism. So was there a point where, like, you just kind of putting it off, or did you always want to do it? Because from the time you started your full-time job to the time you started volunteering, there's a 7-8 year gap there. Was the timing just kind of right?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting the way it played out. So first and foremost, prior to before I actually reached out to the department, I didn't even know there was volunteers in our community. Like I knew there was fire stations, but they kind of looked they were kind of down looking as far as it didn't really look like they were very active. I remember where I worked at when I was working at the shop level. You'd always see the fire trucks go by, and that was from one of the full time stations. And then driving through the community, I would see the volunteer stations, but I never seen anybody there, so I didn't know that they were actually functional, other than just being pieces of history in the community that have not been tore down yet.
Sure.
Uh, But moving into the role, actually the current role I got at my full time job, one of the guys that I was working with, he started talking about the fire service, and he was going through a volunteer class. I said, "Really?" I said, I didn't know he had a volunteer fire department, so that spiked my interest. Then another guy that I worked with at the same company, I found out he was volunteer, and he had just got his his firefighter one certification a year prior, and that really spiked my interest. And I was like, "Man, I gotta get into this." So that was the reason that there was a huge, because I probably, like, when I first got out of the military, I definitely would have probably went straight into at least the volunteer side of it, if not full time then, because I was looking for a job. But it was something I never considered when I first got out and then moved back to Georgia.
When you touch on that, I know that you were a Marine. Did you do any deployments? How long were you in?
Yes, I was in the Marine Corps, active duty, 2007 to 2011. I was with 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines out in Camp Pendleton. I was an infantryman, a grunt. So I went to Iraq in '09 and Afghanistan 2010. So
Awesome.
good time, good times at GWAT.
So I imagine once this thing pops live, you're probably gonna have a couple of your Marine buddies tuning in. So it's good to give them a little shout out. Um,
Yeah.
that might come up again here shortly with your background. So let's jump into it's cliche, but the meat and potatoes of kind of why you're here. So you start volunteering, and you have I don't want to say an odd story. Maybe it's not that odd, but it's odd to me that you start in about 2019, you start to volunteer, and then all of a sudden, you've only been in 7 years, and you start knocking off the list of difficult things to do in the fire service. And you started out with Spartan. So I want to know the beginning of the path of what made you decide, as a volunteer, and they get a bad rap, right? They're not as into the job potentially, or they don't keep themselves as good a shape potentially. But you jump in and you start crushing stuff. What was the motivation for that? Take us down that path.
And we can back up a little bit too,
Sure.
and I can talk about, from the volunteer aspect, the career, looking at volunteer versus, that stigma there to hit it hard from the yard and all that. And I get all that. I do 100%. But something that changed my perspective on that is, so I was active duty Marine Corps, had 2 combat deployments under my belt. And then when I left active duty, I went to a reserve unit in Tallahassee, Florida. It was an infantry unit too. But the whole time I was active duty, we'd always be like, "Oh yeah, it's the weekend warriors." 2 weeks in the summer and then one weekend a month. Like, man, what do they know? And then I went in with that mindset, um, and it really humbled me whenever I got into that unit, because there was some guys that were straight reserve Marines. They had never went active duty Fleet Marine Corps, and seeing how they performed not only as a Marine but also privately in the private sector, whether they were in law enforcement, they were college students. They had perspectives of life that I didn't have at the time, just being active duty Marine Corps. And it really was pivotal, or played a role in their level of professionalism, knowledge, and experience, that definitely helped out as far as the team atmosphere, inside the Marine Corps unit, or the infantry unit I was with. So, and then the same thing with the fire service. You have a lot of guys, and I get it, man. I see the pictures on Facebook. Fighting fire, no shirt on, flip flops. Hitting it hard from the yard. I get it, man. Like, some people do not need to be in the fire service. And but I don't know. It's
Yeah,
it's
I want to make
it's
it.
interesting.
I want to make it very clear. I started volunteer. I have a very soft spot for volunteers. Then those guys are doing the best. Some of those guys are just doing the best they can, man. They're working 60, 70 hours a week to, working a couple of jobs, and then they're trying to support their community. Once again, love volunteers, but once again, the stigma is the stigma. And so, I'm glad that you point that out. Like you got the dichotomy in that military. So when you transferred over to the volunteer side, I guess I don't want to say you had a soft spot for it, but you kind of said, whoa, before we put that stigma on these volunteers, there could be some guys out there that are not paid, that are taking the job more seriously than some of the paid guys, or they're more into it, or they're more professional. They have more, like you said, they have more life experience. They might be overall just better firemen, even though they are not paid. So I'm glad you mentioned it. And it's kind of good that the military kind of gave you a little taste of that, even though that wasn't their intention. You got that life experience first. All right, so you show up in the volunteer side, and then moving from that point, yeah, you decide to start tackling some difficult things. What led you down that path?
Yeah, so and I can go a couple ways with this. One of the things was whenever I was going through like getting Fire One, trying to get certified and all that. After I went through, I got my Pro Board Fire One certification, and then after that, going through on Mondays they would do training. The first 3 Mondays of the month they would do a training exercise for the volunteers, and yes, that's prior to I went to any conferences or anything like that, but in my mind, I guess I was, comparing it to the way I trained in the Marine Corps. The training, the level of training that we were doing, I didn't feel was adequately preparing me for the job. Especially whenever you look at line of duty deaths and stuff like that, and read up on them as far as the cause of the line of duty death or what happened, what went wrong, what could have went better. And I was looking at the level of training that I was receiving at my department at the time versus, running calls, going structure fires, vehicle accidents and everything else. I'm like, I'm not, in my opinion, from the fire service side, I'm not nowhere where I need to be an asset on the fire ground. And that's when I started seeking out, like these different programs. I had a friend of mine that's he's a battalion chief now at the city in my hometown, and he brought up the Spartan. So he told me about it, and then the very next opportunity to apply for the class, I applied for it, and luckily I got into it, and that was the momentum, or what started the momentum as far as classes go, and really challenging myself outside what the normal requirements are.
So let's touch on that real quick. Spartan. I don't know much about the program, and I don't want it to be like a full on plug for the Spartan program. But like, if somebody doesn't know about it, like myself, what did that mostly entail? Like,
Yeah,
go ahead.
it's the Georgia Firefighter Spartan program. It's held in Douglas, Georgia. I think they've officially. I think after this last class we had a few weeks ago, I think they're well over I think they just went over 100 people that have passed the class. There's 12 candidates per class. This last class that we had, you had people from Georgia, Tennessee, Illinois, and Texas come to it. So it's really starting to get its name out there as far as people applying for the class. But it's more of it's a 24-hour straight basic firefighter function class. You do a live fire, you do car fire, you do search, Denver drills. You do PT in the middle of it several times. So it's a 24-hour class. It's definitely going to test you physically and mentally, and it is tailored towards people. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it is tailored towards people that got 1 to 3 years in the fire service that really are looking to advance up to the levels of like Flames, or Georgia Smoke Dive or OBT, something like that. So
Yeah, we'll get to OBT in a minute, but it sounds an awfully lot like OBT is what without knowing what goes on, it sounds pretty dang close.
man, when I went through it, it was funny because I was wondering maybe I had a year in the fire service, close to 2 years, and I can remember probably like hour 12, 13 started getting dark and all that. And I'm like, man, what the heck am I doing here? Like, I'm a volunteer. Like, why am I putting myself through this right now? And it was, it was humbling to say the least, man. Because I can say, from the physical, not trying to go to rabbit holes or anything like that, but like from the physical fitness aspect, I was in the infantry Marine Corps. I was out in Pendleton, so it was real hilly out there. Like we did some hard things. Nothing has ever prepared me for the fire service as the way the fire service is, especially on like fire ground operations. Putting the gear on, you're in the heat, like doing stuff as far as the firefighter goes, it's very humbling
Um,
from a physical aspect.
man, yeah, don't first of all, don't feel bad about rabbit hole, and I don't put any of my guests on a timer. If you want to go 3 hours, we'll go 3 hours. as much as I love Corley Moore, he keeps it pretty tight on his guests. So we're we'll Joe Rogan this thing. We'll go 6 hours if you want. That's something that we can kind of once we move down your path a little bit, we can kind of discuss, without giving out any uh, curriculum of the programs, just kind of little compare and contrast, right? Because there are not many
Yeah.
people. I only have my OBT experience, so you have a gamut of a few things where you might be able to give some advice, some overall perspective to those three programs. But we'll save that for the back. So you went to Spartan. That was you started, like you said, in 19, and then in 20, roughly 20, you did Spartan, correct?
Yeah, it's like 2021 because I think there was a class that they couldn't do because of COVID.
Mm.
So I wound up getting postponed out to like 21, I believe it was.
Okay, so you hop out, you knock out Spartan, and then what that said you did some conferences. Your brain started to open up. You're in the fire service as to what else was out there. Take us down the path of you eventually signing up for Georgia.
Yeah, so you got done with Spartan, so I really got hooked on like the weekly scrap. Listening to all the podcasts and everything, and just listening to the mindsets of the firefighters that were on there. And there's been some great people on that podcast, and I recommend any firefighter to listen to it. But a couple of the guys, and I'll mention their name in here, is Robert Beecher from Douglas Fire Department, and then Chief Bew from Brunswick Fire Department. Both of them are they're Flames grads. They also went through Georgia Smoke Diver. They've gone to Tennessee Smoke Diver. They've done several programs. I'll probably be leaving stuff out if I to be honest. And they really brought up the whole aspect of going to the Georgia Smoke Diver, talking about the program, what it entailed. And then I guess just from past experiences for me in the Marine Corps, I think one of the things that's really pushed me, it's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but it's something that has really pushed me in the fire service to go and do everything that I can as far as as far as goals and accomplishments is when I was in the Marine Corps, I was, deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. There was several times there was opportunities where I could have, tried out like, scout sniper platoon or something like that. And I had friends that did it and went through the program, came scout snipers. And I never did it at the time because I was comfortable where I was at. And looking back on it, now that I'm out of the military, I really wish I would have said, you know what, yeah, I'm comfortable now, but I'm going to get outside my comfort zone and I'm going to put in the work to go through this program or NDOC, whatever it was, and then see what I'm about physically and mentally is whether or not I can make it through the program.
So
So,
no, I kind of
but
want yeah, I wanted to touch on that real quick. That was one of the things that I said about OBT. Why did I do it? Because I didn't want to live with regret. I didn't want to be on my deathbed saying like, I wish I would have attempted that thing when I potentially could have passed it. But and you get by the time you're 55, 60, you're like, all right, it moved
yeah,
past me. And so you already had, I hate the word, I don't like the word regret, but that's kind of what it is. Like, uh, you're going to live with the fact that you maybe could have done scout sniper, and then that did something in your brain to say, don't let that happen again. But you caught it early
yeah.
in your fire service journey, which is good. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, look at like I'm proud of my time I had in the military because I did well. I got meritorious promoted, stuff like that, and squad leader in Afghanistan as a 21-year-old corporal. So I mean, I did well as far as my Marine Corps career, and I wouldn't change it. But kind of looking back, there was some things that I was interested in doing, but like I said, I would never at the time I would not step outside that comfort zone. I wanted to stay where I was at, and not try something hard. Um,
And so
so
you reflected back on that. So you listen to the
yeah.
scrap, you're catching a couple guys that are talking about these things, and now you've already done Spartan. And so what's that thought process like? Well, that's 24 hours. This Georgia's 6 days. Did somebody talk you into that, or was it a self motivating, like, I'm going to go sign the dotted line to go?
Yeah, yeah, people I met at conferences and stuff like that that went through GSD, talking to them, I was really interested in the program as far as what it had to offer. Um, and then most importantly, I mean, I just wanted to challenge myself. It was, I remember when I finally signed up for it, I told my wife, I was like, hey, the signups for GSD are coming up in August. I'm going to go try out, and if I get it, obviously I'll be going to a class. And it was an interesting time, um, as far as uh, anything that I could find, like on the Georgia Smoke Diver website or anything like that, and trying to find out as much information as I could about that class. I was like, this is what I want to do, because not only is it going to test me physically, but most importantly, it's going to test me mentally. And that's something where I've enjoyed challenges that do that. Because yeah, it's very physical program, but the mental aspect, they have that down to a science as far as when people come in on day one to day six. And we called it playing games in the Marine Corps. Georgia Smoke Divers got it down, and it was a good time because I played the game.
Um, yeah, we could go a few different routes with that. We can either pause a little bit on Georgia and talk about what your experience was like as far as did you one shot it? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, so it was the my first attempt was successful. I went there with the mindset on Sunday, like I am not leaving until Friday after I get my shirt. That was the mindset that I went in with. I got paired up. It was lo and behold, I got paired up with another Marine, Brian McCree from Bryan County. So I was like, we were two Marines that were in a room together. It was like, hey, dude, we're gonna do this, and we did it, man. It was a long week, man. It was You can prepare as much as you want physically for that class, and it'll obviously help you be successful. But mentally, man, you got to be locked in, and that's where I think a lot of people um, fall short on that class, is not being locked in mentally, and never attempting something like that that really pushes you outside your comfort zone. Um, I know me and my roommate, man, we had conversations every night. Like, man, this is wild. We were two Marines that went to, both combat veterans and all this and that, and it was like, man, this is wild. This is a good time, but it's a good class.
Well, so yeah, let's pause on the GSD thing a little bit. Obviously, the curriculum itself is very protected, and so we're not gonna dive into any curriculum. But tell me a story or two of like when you really, where did you? Obviously, you didn't hit a full breaking point because you didn't quit. But you're saying that you have conversations with McCree at night. What was there a spot where you hit maybe a dark spot where you're like, man, I don't know. I said I wasn't going to quit. And now that I'm in this spot, that did the demon start to talk to you a little bit, you know?
I would say the worst point of that class for me wound up being, it was actually on Thursday. It was on the burn day. We had to do the basement drills. Basement drills, man, if anybody's ever done them, people that have gone through smoke divers know that it is rough and it is hot. Like, I have never been in training burns that even remotely compared to the GSD burns. And we wound up, we did our first evolution. You're in a 3-man group. Actually, Logan Broberg, I don't know if you know him.
I do.
Logan was one of my partners, me and him, and another guy from North Carolina, and we were a 3-man group. We were doing the evolution on the first one, and I think we may have missed. I don't think we missed a victim, but there was some reason we didn't pass. So we wound up getting taken out, and we had to got a rehab for a few minutes, and then we had to come back and do it again. And on the second evolution, we wound up there was it's a multi-story fire basement drill. So we wound up putting some fire out and then going down the basement, and then the fire rebounded behind us. And we're in a stairwell, so it's like burning over the stairwell. And then the basement fire, he went to put it out, started getting the victim out, and then that fire rebounded, and then we're in the stairwell just eating it. Like, I mean, we're getting burned up. Instructors pull us out, and we go back to rehab again. It's like, y'all got one more opportunity. If y'all don't make it, like, we can't allow you safely to go back in again. So we wound up, going back, all three of us are sitting there like, man, we've got to, this is our last opportunity. We've got to make this. And we wound up, we did our last run, man. We did very well on it, but it was a humbling experience there, because I was like, man, I've made it to Thursday, and there's a possibility I'm getting sent home today and tomorrow's graduation. So it was rough, but
Because
it was good. Once we completed that evolution, it was. was good to go.
So that's more of a physical thing, right? You didn't get too bad into the weeds on the mental side. I know you said mentally it was difficult, but there wasn't a moment of like waking up in the morning and like, man, I got to go. You don't know really what's coming. You know that it's going to be bad. You know that once again, every day is going to be bad, but I got to go put that wet gear on. There was no like
Yeah.
the nights and the mornings didn't mess with you to potentially say, what if I just man, I just ring the bell. I say ring the bell. I just go hang up, hang up the lanyard and call it. Did you have that?
Um,
You were good.
Never had the mindset of quitting. I was going home Friday, the only way I was leaving and hanging up my weapon is if they told me to go home. I legit had the mindset made up. I'm not quitting.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
I've had several people on. I've had several smoke divers on, and one of the guys it was a Mississippi episode where there was four Mississippi guys, and one of them had said, you can make those packs. Well, I had no I cut several. Donald Smith said it's a Mississippi guy, and then Jimmy Gregory also said it out of Cobb, where it's easy to make the pact of we won't quit when you're in the AC and you're sitting in a comfortable chair and you can make that handshake to say I'm not going anywhere. But when it
that, that little voice in your head, it gets loud. It
it gets
definitely
ve-
gets
it gets very loud, and that's kind of why I was asking you, hey, did that voice get loud for you? But truthfully, and I'm not blowing smoke, it's impressive that it apparently didn't get loud enough for you to even entertain it. Because even for
I
OB,
mean, there was times I can remember one time it was I think it was like on day two PT. We were doing you start the day out, you do your calisthenic PT and gear, then you do your O course and your run. And on day two is whenever you're wearing your gear, but you don't have your face piece on. And like the whole time I trained for this program, I always had a face piece on. So we didn't have face piece on day two. And we're doing like up downs or mountain climbers or something like that. And my jacket like went over my head. And I'm in a position to where, my butt's up in the air and I'm holding that position and I'm like, I can't breathe. Like my jacket is literally over my head. Like I'm not able to breathe right now. And if he doesn't like tell us to stand up pretty quick, like I'm going to fall out. So it was a predicament I definitely got myself into. It was rough. So
I
dang,
can't.
dude, I can't. I'm ready to put my mask on. I would much rather work out with a mask on.
That's crazy because I've worked out with my mask on quite a bit, and man, especially when you're not clipped in and the sweat is just pouring into your eyes and you can do nothing about it. So you're doing all these up downs or whatever you're doing, and you just basically gotta keep your eyes closed because
Yeah.
it's just all it is sweat, and there's nothing you could do to wipe it. I don't know about that mask on stuff. It's not enjoyable for me for sure. You're making me wipe my eyes, and I don't even have any sweat in them. I've had
Uh,
PTSD. Um,
yeah.
so, yeah, we might touch back on GSD in a little. Go ahead.
Another thing I want to bring up too about like going through a program like that, regardless of what it is, whether it's like GSD or OBT, a fire academy, anything in your personal private life, whatever, is just the small victories. Break it down into bite-sized pieces, and then you know win them victories, and then ultimately you'll win the victory in the end.
Yeah, that solid advice. Super solid. It's the
Yeah, so
same.
we had a thing. I remember a thing when I was in boot camp. It was chow to chow, Sunday to Sunday. So chow to chow. You get them victories, you get to eat, and then Sunday to Sunday, you go to church, and then eventually it's time to graduate, and you get the title.
Yeah,
So
yeah, same advice for OBT. That I would give one thing at a time. Just do one thing at a time. Um,
yeah.
so you get out of GSD, and if you got more GSD stories, feel free to bring them up because I think they're so interesting. Once again, without giving away too much curriculum, but so you knock out GSD in what year?
23.
Okay, so 23, and then Baz's thing
Yeah,
pops. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
that's one thing too I wanted to bring up. So
Sure.
graduated from GSC. I had it on my notes or whatever. But so you go through the door and you're given a number. So everybody's
Mhm.
given a number. You got your GSC number. If you ever ask anybody like, "Hey, yeah, you went to the smoke diver, what's your number?" Everybody always asks what your number is. So my number, and it's this significance of my number, which is something that definitely means it meant a lot to me whenever I got it, but it means even more to this day because of who I share it with. So um, in June of 23, a very good friend of mine that worked at the same department was killed in a vehicle crash as a fire truck rollover. Wound up resulting from a DUI driver that was apparatus operator that was under the influence, rolled the truck and killed him. And he was his name is Bobby Blue Smith. He was the best individual ever, man. Like everybody loved him. But his employee number for the fire department I was at was 1164. So my smoke diver number is 1164, and his employee number is 1164. So, faith just being what it was, that I'm able to share that number with him, from here on out, means a lot.
And that was not intentional. It landed that way.
No, because I graduated GSC in February, and then in June he was killed. So
Wow. Yeah, that's special. And you're gonna hold that forever, which is very cool. Um yeah, so from GSD, what's also interesting is that, Baz pops up his course. Now anybody, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know who Baz is, but he pops up his OBT, one bad tour, 24 hours, similar stuff to Spartan, drills, PT, all that stuff. Now you've already done this through Spartan. You've already done that side of it. You go through this 6-day course. So my question to you is, in my opinion, like GSD for the most part, outside of maybe other very difficult smoke diver programs, GSD is kind of one of those like pinnacles. It's kind of one of those, one of the hardest things that you can accomplish in the fire service. You see OBT, you've already accomplished something that is very similar to OBT and GSD, but yet you want to sign up for that thing too. And spoiler alert, you go and you pass that, but what motivates you to go do that? What is going on inside your brain that says, "Yes, I want to go knock that out," even though you clearly never had anything to prove?
I think a lot of it, So cool. The cool story about my GSC class is Bays was actually my class leader in class 62.
Hmm.
So Bays, Matt McGee, and all them, and Logan, we're all in the same class. So, and then just obviously just seeing things as far as stuff that Bays has posted on Facebook, his leadership and all, seeing him at FDIC and all that. The opportunities to be able to go to these classes and train with these individuals, to me, is priceless. Not only that, but to be around like-minded individuals that are attending the classes, you learn so much from them, and so much from them, and that's the people I want to be around. Because we all have the people in the firehouses that just sit around. To them, a successful day in the firehouse is sitting around doing absolutely nothing, not even checking the truck off, and then I get to go home at 7 a.m. I'm like, man, I had a good shift. I'm like, no, that's a horrible shift.
So no, we're gonna let's nail down that a little bit. I want to back you up. This is not my podcast, but I will. I want to talk about that. Let's talk about it. Going back to OBT 10, graduated 9, went back to 10. Me and Josh Bork, who's been on this podcast a billion times, when we were at 10 as cadre, we were like, this is the freaking coolest vibe in the whole, like being, and I know that you experience it through GSD also. If you've ever been back as cadre, I'm just assuming you've been back at least once to help.
I've gone back once.
So the being around, like you said, you already said it, like-minded individuals, but the high achievers that are everywhere. You look around and there's nobody in that group that is saying, how can we get away with doing as little as possible? They don't exist. It's like, I know that I'm like, I want to spend as much time. Like, I wish there were 10 OBTs a year so I can go back 10 times to be in that same environment, because it felt like Disneyland for firefighters. If you love the job, it really did. It felt like the perfect.
It's refreshing, man. It recharges the batteries, because you'll get beat down in your own fire station or fire department. You're feeling like you're a go-getter and all this, and you're wanting to do all these things, accomplish all these things. And everyone's looking at you like, dude, what are you doing? Why would you want to do that? But then whenever you go to a conference, or if you go back as a cadre to a training program, you're like, man, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Yes. Yes, I'm not. Yeah, you can almost be.
I'm not the only one in the fire service that has this same mindset.
Yes, depending on the culture that you work in, you could almost be looked. You are ostracized and looked at as excuse me, as crazy, as why is he so ate up? All just the list is endless. And then you go to these events, whether it's once again, I can only speak for OBT, but even conferences, and you're like, I'm not crazy. It is right. It does feel good. So I wanted to touch that because, man, I feel that on a very deep level. And it sounds like, I don't want to answer for you, but you kind of already did, that you really weren't going back to OBT to prove anything necessarily. You just wanted to be around the like-minded guys, and be is really the environment maybe that you were seeking out versus the struggle that you knew was coming. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, obviously, I like the struggles that the class puts you into because I feel like if something were to happen on the job, and I was put in a predicament where I had to save myself or save somebody else, I want to remind myself that yeah, I am prepared for that situation, as far as mentally, physically. So therefore, going to these classes and getting put in these high stress situations that require a lot of physical effort, is definitely it's a gut check, and it humbles you, and makes sure that you are ready if something happens. And then ultimately, besides all of that, we're in the service industry. We provide a service for the citizens that we serve. So therefore, I want to make sure that I am 100%, and I'm providing for them. What they think they're getting. I want to make sure that I am 100% providing that for them.
Yeah, I had a there was I've I've heard, behind my back, what's the whole point of that OBT stuff and da 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 kind of, but I'm glad that it's not just me answering the question. You're also answering the question of, we are making sure that we are trying to stay as sharp as we can for the citizens that we serve.
Yeah,
Are we who we
100%.
say we are too? If we say we're into the job, or if we say that physical fitness matters to us, there's only really one way to, I don't want to say certify that, but there's only one way to really figure that out. And it's to be held
Yeah.
to a standard, held to a strong standard, and hopefully come out on the other side, successful. But what is the benefit? You know, are we just doing out? Is it a macho thing? The answer is no. We are trying to pressure test ourselves. So I'm glad you mentioned
And
that.
especially in my department, dude. And we're a relatively small department, but there's you got all genres of individuals that are in the department, as far as you go getters, and then you ones that just rather sit on the couch. And I've heard it said multiple times that, oh, you're just a volunteer. Why are you going to go do all of that? And the way I look at it, that's kind of, I had that conversation on Discord at one time, and everybody started commenting on it. You're not just volunteering. And I'm 100% in agreement with that. Because when we show up to a house at 3 a.m., the citizens outside, or the citizens inside that house that we need to rescue, or that vehicle that got heavy entrapment that we need to get the individuals out and provide medical care, they don't care if you're a volunteer or a career firefighter. That hasn't even crossed their mind. So whenever I show up to a call, I want to like a professional.
Yeah.
So
Look like it, and ultimately, right, act like it. Like you are going to
100%. I want to perform as a professional.
yeah. That no, that's yeah, that's very good stuff. So you go knock out OBT, and so this is not tying up the end of the podcast, but I kind of want to know, you're banging out all this stuff. You've also run 50Ks, so you like, hard things seem to be ingrained in you, running charity 5Ks in gear. What you, you've only been in the fire service for about 7 years. This is all reasonably new to you, kind of, sort of, the fire service in general. Are you eyeballing something in the future?
Yeah, actually, I was selected for the Last Flames class, and I wound up having to drop from that class because my nephew was graduating from boot camp, so I couldn't miss that. I had an opportunity to go back to Paris Island, and also had to drop from that class. And then I know in this early summer they'll post their registration process again for that. So I'm definitely looking at Flames. I would like to go there. North Carolina Breathing School. That's definitely on a bucket list. I know Tommy DeWitt, and he just went through it, and I was going to reach out to him and try to get some more information on it. So I mean, and it's not like any of these classes or anything like that I go through, I don't go through it from a bragging aspect. I don't think I'm better than anybody else because I'm not. I am a volunteer firefighter in small town Georgia that responds to. I mean, we do respond to a decent amount of calls, but not nobody special. I mean that, and I mean that. Like, but
So
I like doing firefighting stuff. I like putting gear on. I like doing stuff that's hard.
do you, I know for me, my training dips. Like I never stop. There's never a stop, but my training load and volume and intensity dips if there's nothing on the schedule. So if there's no marathon, if there's, no BT, it slumps. Do you find that yours slumps, or are you putting things on the schedule to keep your intensity up, or is it are you a kind of same motor the whole time and then you just sign up for stuff?
I think the whatever training it would be that prepping for, whether it's a 50K ultra in the mountains or something like that. Obviously, how I'm training would change differently, but as far as actually putting in for a class or something like that, just to stay motivated to train, not necessarily. I mean, I try to keep myself in shape anyways. My body's I'm only 36 years old, but it feels pretty broken at this point. Definitely from accomplishments in the fire service and the Marine Corps, I think it definitely played a toll on my body. But yeah, just trying to stay active, man. There was a time there where I got out of the military, and I'll go to another thing about the fire service. I got out of the military. I'm in the private sector working, like corporate America job, and I'm like not working out or anything like that, gaining weight. I'm like, I am falling apart. I am losing myself. And then whenever I finally, had an opportunity to go back to the fire or go into the fire service, I'm like, this is the void since I left the military. This is filling that void that has been there for the last 8, 9, 10 years. I'm back into something bigger than myself as far as providing a service to someone as a servant. So
Yeah. Ty Guidry, who I had on previously, he did North Carolina Breathing School. It said it took him forever to get in. But you're right. There are several guys at the John Gallagher just went through it. I think
yeah,
he's a Mississippi guy.
yeah, uh, yeah. John Gallagher from Making Build. Is that who you're talking about?
I'm almost sure. I'm almost sure.
Yeah, yes. Him and Tommy just went through it and just graduated.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
good luck. Good luck getting in. I think it's well, there are a bunch of dudes. Cologne, Klein. There was a
yeah.
pile of guys that just got into that. So anyway, best of luck on your future endeavors to try to go get that. Is Florida on the map?
I don't know, man. I've looked at Florida. I don't know if I'm where I need to be in Florida.
Dude,
That Florida's on another level.
Florida's different, dude. Florida is absolutely different.
Just looking at the entrance to get into it, it's on another level for sure.
I think the sit-ups, like how many sit-ups in a certain like whatever whatever the standard was, like oh my God, we're gonna have to get. Like,
Yeah,
I'll never be there. I'll never be. And then they only scoop the top. It's not like you got to know. They
yeah,
just literally take the best of the. So even if you barely squeeze by the minimum standards, like good luck. You're not get like you're not gonna make it because there's dudes running freaking 9 minute mile and a halves that are just gonna smoke it. But anyway, yeah, Florida's a different animal.
yeah. It's definitely a young man's game.
It is, dear God. I know.
I,
Oh,
Whenever I was at GSD, I was 34, 33, something like that when I went through, and then had some young 20-year-olds in there. Like, man, y'all recovered way faster than I did.
oh, I felt that. I was the second oldest in my class at OBT. Everybody gets up and says their age, and I said 42, and I was waiting for somebody to be like 48, 49, 50, and there were none. There was one other guy that was 43, and I was like, this is a what like come on, grandpa. What are you doing over here? Like go I need to go do something, get a rocker and retire. This is not where I need to be. But anyway, very glad I did it. But
I'm roll right now, Monday through Friday.
yeah. So um, you got all those things on the list, the things you want to jump into later. Well, I want to know one of the biggest things is when you're doing all these, whether it's classes or conferences, is trying to. I know that I passionately want to pull people into the mix with me. Hey, come to this conference. Come check out this thing that's going on. Get outside your bubble of the fire service. Hey, go sign up for OBT. Whatever the case, have you had success in getting guys to come along with you? Have you found buy-in in your orbit? And what worked, maybe what didn't work? Kind of, what's your story on that?
I've had some success. It's definitely been a rocky road, as anyone would probably have, especially in the fire service. Um, going to these the conferences and stuff like that, I've always pushed out the invite. Hey, I'm going to this class. If anybody wants to go, you're more than welcome to ride with me. You can come with me, share a room together or something like that. Um, the biggest thing is like, and then around the firehouse, whenever I go visit and stuff like that, or just talking to guys on text message or phone calls, stuff like that. Like, hey man, I went to this conference. These are all the things that we went over. This is, it was met all these great people. The next one that's coming up, I would really like for you to go with me. I think you would really enjoy it. And I've had success doing that. I got one individual. He's actually a volunteer with Ware County as well. He part times and he's a volunteer, works in the agricultural industry. Man, if there's a class that comes up, he's like, yeah, as long as his schedule permits, like he'll go with me 100% of the time almost. Like this coming weekend, we got the 912 Firemanship conference coming up in Polar, Georgia that we'll be going to. Um, and he's going with me to Bears of the Oath. And it's just one of the things, we go to them, we take the pictures and stuff like that, and then coming back, talking to the guys at the stations where it's the career guys or the volunteer guys, and then just letting them know, like, hey, these are all the cool things that we got to go and do. The next opportunity that comes available, if your schedule permits, definitely come with us because from what I've gathered, at least my perception on the fire service is the fire service is relatively small if you think about it. And then because you'll start meeting people, and then these people know these people, and it's just like all interconnected. And it's like if you don't get outside your bubble of your department, you are missing out on so much. And it's one of the cool things that I've seen, like going to North Florida Fire Conference. That was the first one I ever went to. Going down there, so I had like, maybe a year in, something like that, just got certified and all that. Seen these fire conferences, so I signed up and we went to it. And man, it was so cool just to be around other firefighters from different states that do things completely different than the way we do it, where I'm from, and just getting out to experience that, see it, actually try it for myself. And I was able to learn so much. And then some of it we actually brought back to our department and was able to implement. So,
Yeah, let's touch on that. Let's touch on that. How much success have you had where you learn whatever it is you're learning? Like for me, search was super interesting, but it could be anything. How much success have you had bringing back stuff, whether it be from Georgia? Because what do the Georgia guys say? What does Baz say? What are all these people saying? Go back and teach. Like it's not a secret. Don't keep it all. Like go back and teach. How much success have you had implementing some of those things into your department or area?
yeah, yeah, some of it's been pretty decent as far as I guess I definitely had to. It was something that I more or less learned off listening to one of the conferences. Someone asked on one of the weekly scraps. If you go to a conference and you learn all this, whenever you go back to your firehouse, you have to be mindful or tactful on how you present that information. You don't go back with a mindset of, oh, we've been doing it wrong for 30 plus years. I can't believe we've been doing it like this. This is the right way to do it. So things that we have brought back. We changed up from we were running triple A's forever, and then we finally went to a modified Minuteman. We had a specific incident where like the modified Minuteman would have like worked flawlessly. So what we did is we brought it back. We showed everybody what we were talking about doing, and everybody got an opportunity to try it. And we, as a department, wound up going to modified Minuteman. It's been that way ever since. So
Yeah, good choice. What about
and
the
some things I brought back, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. Absolutely not. Whatever.
you win some, you lose some, right? You're not gonna win them all for sure. Um, so yeah, a little bit of success, whether it be dragging guys along. Have you got anybody to sign up for hard stuff yet in your department?
So I had one guy. He signed up for the Spartan. It was actually the last class we wound up going to. He signed up for the Spartan. Made it in like 20 plus hours, or no, well, probably what 20 hours. It was probably 18, 19 hours in, and wound up going home from it. Had a physical issue where he had to go home. But I have had some people show some interest in classes. We got one guy that just got out of fire academy this past year, and he's definitely eyeballing something. So whether it's Spartan, GSD, Flames, whatever it is, I think he'll definitely wind up being a candidate at one of them programs.
Good, good. I think they're super valuable. So if that person is listening, highly encourage. Go challenge yourself a little bit. Let's hop off to okay. So got a little bit of influence within the department as far as implementing things or getting people on board with you, trying to build the tribe around your organization. It's the tribe at Georgia is easy, right? They all believe the same things you think that you believe. There's you don't have to have any buy-in. Buying in your tribe and your orbit very difficult. So, what about topics outside of these things that you feel passionately about, and why those opinions matter to you? So touch on some of that.
I'll say one of the things I'm pretty passionate about as far as implementing it is standards. As far as an organization is having, standards and expectations that are clearly outlined and then holding people accountable to them. I've heard the saying, "You become what you allow," and I believe that 100%. You can have it written on black and white paper. These are our standards, but if there's no accountability, then you will 100% become, as an organization, of what you allow to happen. And Bates, whenever it comes to standards, dude, he hits the nail on the head as far as holding a high standard, high level of expectation, and expecting follow through. So, and I feel the same way. Our citizens deserve the best, so therefore we should provide them the best. And the way we do that is by having high standards.
Yeah, standards and expectations. Man, expectations are huge, and I know it's difficult in a volunteer department, right? Because if they're getting paid, they should be doing it. Very, very simple. But man, the volunteers, right? The warm bodies. Like we just need somebody to drive the truck. We need somebody in the gear flowing the hose. It's
But that's like our department, man. It's a small combination department. There's only two full time stations. There's 5 people on shift, and we're one of the biggest counties in Georgia. So we have a very big coverage area. And unfortunately, there's probably close to 50 something rostered volunteers. But if we were to have a structure fire right now in the middle of the county, you would be lucky to have 2 or 3 volunteers show up. So yeah, so you got your 5 people on shift, and you got like three your normal volunteers that show up, and you're fighting fire with 8 people if you're lucky.
that goes back to that man that touches it. That goes down a rabbit hole of like doing short staff tactics. So when you talk about trying to do suppression and have somebody that's got to be outside running command, but we also
Yeah,
need to do
man.
a search, but we also have to vent. Like we ran out of people a long time ago. Like that's
Yeah,
difficult.
and that's where the standards and all really play a pivotal role as far as fireground performance and expectations, as far as task assignments and completion. You have to have a very well-rounded fireman that is good at not only flowing and moving, also doing search. Um, all the different fireground activities if you're doing ventilation or something like that. And you have to have a high expectation on them, especially on to me, a department that is minimally staffed as we are. You have to have very well-rounded firemen that are good at their job. And the only way you get there is you hold them to a high standard expectation, and you provide quality training for them.
That's it. It's not
That's
any more difficult than that, right? Set a high standard, high expectations, hold them to it, and then make sure that you're providing the training that meets
yeah,
that standard and expectation. It's not, you just wrote a leadership book in, 3 sentences, but it's how is very difficult. It's the
yeah.
implementation of it can be difficult. Um,
It is. I mean, it's definitely a challenge for sure.
so moving on from there, leadership, not to say leadership, measuring success, your personal definition of success, and stuff you're proud of, and then stuff you'd like to grow in. Let's dabble into that. What's your
Yeah,
definition
I
of
think
success?
it's from the aspect of, as far as measuring success, is ultimately having goals set aside. These are the goals that I want to accomplish. This is the roadmap on how I'm going to accomplish the goals, and then ultimately accomplishing the goals. And I think if you can be disciplined to the process and do it, regardless if it's a short term goal or a long term goal, I think ultimately, in my opinion, that would be the way I would measure my success is how well I performed.
And just tap it. Moving to the very next thing. What are you most proud of? you've done a lot of stuff, right? Whether it's running in gear, the 50Ks, or the once again all the different accolades of the difficult programs that you've gone through. Uh, what
I
are you
think,
most proud of?
man, I think that, the best, all that stuff's cool and all, but most thing I'm proud of is being a father and a husband. Um, to my wife and kids. I got my wife supports me 100%. I put her through the gamut as far as going all these different programs. I just went through EMT school. I'm in AM or advanced school now. Work full time job, and then my kids, man. I want to be somebody that they look up to and they're proud of as far as things that I've accomplished and all that, but ultimately I want them to be like my dad was present in my life and he raised me, and these are the things that I took away from him. So
I'm glad that you mentioned that. That is becoming more and more common on these podcasts. And I get emotional when you say it because I feel the same exact way about my wife. It's the fire. It gets said all the time. The fire department's going to replace you immediately as soon as I leave. If I quit today, that roster spot would be filled within the hour, and
yeah,
that's it. But my wife's not going anywhere, and that's
yeah,
we really need to focus back on you more so, but I also enjoy the fire service. I wouldn't have a podcast that I don't get paid for, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't enjoy having these conversations. But it all goes away. But what doesn't is your family. They don't go away. So I'm glad that more guys are saying out loud, yeah, this is a fire podcast, but let's not forget that that should be outside of your faith. If your faith is more important, that's obviously perfectly fine. But um, your wife,
definitely.
go ahead.
Faith, family, and fire. I'm 100% on that. Like with John Spear and everything that he's got going on, man. I'm like 100% behind that with Fit to Fight Fire. But ultimately too, and my wife, man. I mean, everything I put her through as far as like doing these classes and all that, these preps for these going to GSD and stuff. And she's able to, because something that I have struggled with in the past. I feel like I've gotten a lot better. Is I'll commit my whole self 100% to doing something to accomplishing a goal, and then she will help rein me back to like, hey, you got to chill out a little bit. Like, and I appreciate that. We work as a team, not um, one or the other. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. She asked me to we homeschool our boys, and she asked me this morning. She said, "Hey, can you knock out some labs with my oldest?" I said, "Sure, not a problem. We'll get on that." And then I told her I was like, "Hey, I got this podcast I need to knock out before that." And it wasn't like, but I said, it was like, okay, it's like okay. So whether it's conferences, going back to OBT multiple times, or FDIC, or whatever the case is, it's like having that balance. She's super, super supportive of me, but at the same time, understanding that there's other responsibilities besides you just going to do fun fire stuff. And it's what an asset, what an absolute asset to your life with the balance. Um,
Yeah. And
good.
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna hit on things that you'd like to like grow in. Like so, you got what you're most proud of. How would you like to improve?
I think from the professional aspect, but the fire service, is ultimately, as always, it's working on like the I guess leadership aspect of it or whatever, as far as like the psychological aspect of dealing with people. Kind of in the fire department that I'm in as a volunteer, there is no leadership positions or anything like that for volunteers. Like you are a volunteer firefighter and that's it. There's no like station chiefs or captains or anything like that. It would be neat if they would implement that maybe one day, like a training captain for the volunteers or something like that. Like I would love to be able to do something like that, but I don't know if they ever will, or maybe they will in the future. I don't know. But definitely, just continuing to learn, man. Like I said, I went through EMT and went advanced EMT right now. Just continuing to learn, continue to be better, not only professionally but also at home with my family. Um, is I guess priorities, I guess, over anything.
Yeah, no doubt. Completely agree with you. So let's touch on, struggles, lessons learned, challenges that you faced along the way, and what you learned from those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely gone through some struggles and just recently went through some, definitely with the fire service, fire department with, as far as, just as far as trying to figure out, it's combination departments. So I think with a lot of combination departments, you had the issue of the career side versus the volunteer side. And, for years, man, like when I first got into it, I was given the fire service, my department specifically, everything as far as time and everything else goes, being there for them. And then it finally got to a point where it almost seemed like it wasn't being appreciated. I guess I kind of noticed that was going on. I went out, and, for example, I went and did a grant. I wrote a grant for our fire department. And I guess this is right where it comes to a head. I wrote a grant for our fire department. We got approved the grant and wound up getting some pretty nice equipment out of it. And then like never once was I ever, and it's kind of petty, but like never once was they ever appreciated that I went out of my way, wrote the grant, and then we wound up getting the equipment for it. And that kind of like I don't know, I guess it highlighted I guess some of the issues in the department as far as the volunteers go. So I don't know if I went the right way with that or
No,
not, but
no, I definitely agree with you. There are times where, similarly, I have put time and effort into a thing for no, there's no pay. I'm not asking for anything. I'm dumping things into it, and you almost get, sometimes you get punished for it. Sometimes you'll be,
yeah,
and it makes you.
that's almost what it seemed like. Yeah, that's almost what it seemed like with this. Is like got approved the money and everything else, and I was trying to work on some different stuff, and then it was like got ghosted as far as from our uh from our chief and all. And I'm like, dang, dude, like I don't get it, but
It puts us in a spot where you're a motivated guy, you're trying to help out the department, you want to make it better, you genuinely want to make it better, and it puts us in a position of, well, now I don't know that I want to make it better, because if like that's the response to the thing that we're trying to push or trying to do, it's like you just kind of, not that you want to be run of the mill, but you're like, all right, we're just going to be cruise control. I'll go do other stuff outside. I'll go to, let's say, going back to Georgia. I'll go visit, OBT, or I'll invest my time and efforts not here, because here they're clearly not appreciated. So,
yeah,
and it's a tough spot to be in.
yeah, and it was definitely a lull that I went through there for a while, but I'm slowly getting out of it, and I think things are turning for the better. So we'll keep grinding away.
Yeah, trust me.
Ultimately, the
Yeah,
citizens deserve good firemen, so I'm gonna keep providing service because that's an interesting thing too. Where I'm at, man, it's like I was talking about rostered members. There's there's two there's two volunteer stations within 3 miles of my house. I am the only volunteer that responds to them stations,
good
and they're
Lord.
relatively busy stations. So it's like I see the predicament that we're in, and I see the predicament that we're in, and I know what we need, but we need more volunteers. And me personally, like as a volunteer, I think we need more paid people. We need more paid stations because you can't beat paid stations in career firefighters. Like I'm 100% supportive of that. It's because they're at the station 24/7 and they're ready to respond. Whereas volunteers, I may be on vacation, maybe out of town, maybe sick, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of times where we've had significant calls come out in my district. I'm not be here. And then the other fire crews are tied up on the other side of town at a wreck or a wildfire or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Paid's the way to go. And ball, that's a whole rabbit hole we're not going to go down, right? Because when I came in, there were a bunch of paid guys, because I'm in a medium sized apartment, like we're not small, and they'd always kind of, many of them would bash on the volunteers, like if they would just stop volunteering, then they'd have to pay them, and it would bring everybody's pay up because there'd be more demand, because you definitely pay them, and if it were only that easy. Like, yeah, I support that. I want all of these volunteer stations to be fully paid. That's just not the reality. That's not the reality that we live in. It's a pie in the sky view, but I am in support of the thing that you're saying. I wish we could pay all volunteers. I agree. We
Yeah.
don't live there. So,
Yeah.
it's tough.
That's one of the decent things, I guess, where the volunteers with us do get paid. And then also in this, and which is it's a minimum amount. It's not a lot, but per call that you run, per training that you attend, you do get paid. And then also like in Georgia, for example, a volunteer is eligible for state fire pension. And I
Really?
always push that. Yeah, I always push that whenever I'm trying to recruit people. I'm like, man, it's the easiest pension you'll get in your life. As far as just being a volunteer, responding to calls in your district. And I've been able to recruit several people so far that have definitely picked up and helped out with the department. So it's worked out, but
Yeah.
definitely a lot of people leaving it out on the table as far as not taking advantage of that.
Eh,
But I get it also too. People that work 40 plus hours a week don't have time to come sit in a several month Fire One class to get certified.
it's so tricky because yes, it is a good. What do we say all the time? If you're here for the pension and the paycheck, go do something else. We don't want you here, right? That's what happens. It's it all the time. So to float it out as like, hey, Georgia's got a volunteer pension. Come over here for the pension. It's like
Yeah,
it's a little bit unfortunately with this situation, we're a little bit talking out of both sides of our mouths because I don't want you here if you're only here for a pension. You can go get a
yeah,
pension somewhere else. I want you to be focused on serving the public, serving the community. But if you are so short staffed on people and you need people, then that's going to be enticing to some people to bring them into the organization and then hope they fall in love with it. We'd like you to be in love with it before you start, but we got to get you here before we can even convince you that it's a great place to be. It's a man, it's tricky. And I'm glad I'm not a fire chief that has to deal with stuff like that. Honestly.
yeah.
So
Be a challenge for sure. But I mean, it's like I know around here, anyways. I mean, every fire department's hiring, and it's like a revolving door at times as far as people coming in, going and leaving, going for higher paying jobs because pay around here is really not that great. And to an extent, you can't blame them as far as providing for their family and then going to a much better paying job. Um,
where are you at roughly? Because I know I say a billion. I know about a billion firemen all in that Cobb slash Atlanta area. Are you nowhere near that?
Southeast corner.
So okay, southeast. You see, I don't know anybody in the southeast. You would be the first one.
Southeast, hour from Jacksonville, hour from the coast.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. You'd be the only one that I would know. But I was just wondering.
Andrew. So do you know McGeehan?
Oh yeah, yeah, McGinn. I forgot. We do know McGinn. We do. I don't understand. Well, I know him. I don't understand what he's saying, but I do know McGinn. That's true. Um, so we love you, McGinn. I'm just picking, brother. So all right, from there, let's knock out. Let's start to tie. Honestly, you can rabbit hole any way you want right here, but let's start to tie this thing up. What I always ask, or I try to ask this on every podcast, but it's the main two questions that I'm really interested in. Which the first one we'll hit is your mentors of the fire service. So that's really difficult because you got such a short time. But I want to know not just the guy you saw on YouTube. I want to know the names and reasons for the guys that have really poured themselves into you. And I say it all the time. This is how I describe it. They had like a vested interest in your success as a fireman. Not just, there's a lot of influences. I have a lot of influences as fireman. Baz is one of them. But Baz is not, I
Yeah.
can't consider him a mentor. I'm not on the phone with Baz all the time, right? But there are guys that I'm definitely on the phone with very often about life, about the fire service, guys that push and motivate me. Do you have those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially like going GSD stuff like that. I mentioned him earlier is Robert Beecher from Douglas Fire. We never worked together, but I went through Spartan, got to know him really well, and he's just genuinely like every time I see him, man, like he walks up, gives me a hug, hey, I love you, brother, and genuinely like cares. And he's an individual, getting ready for GSD and stuff like that. I was able to have conversations with him as far as getting ready for the prep. He's genuinely a good fireman that, in my opinion, genuinely cares about his people that work under him, and then also people that he trains with. Which I guess that's where I would be at. Somebody that trains with him. So
Did you have like a life? Did you have a guy in the fire service that was, if you're having real struggles with whether you're feeling, Josh Bork calls it, you feeling big sad. So you're struggling with something in the department, there's a guy that you can call to vent, and he's always going to pick up the phone and he's going to listen to you fuss for, maybe extended periods of time. Because I got that guy for sure.
Yeah, McGeehan would be my guy.
Oh, McGinn.
Me and him, yeah, so we're at the same department, so and we've had some conversations for sure.
Good man. McGinn's making a double appearance on the podcast. So we love to see it.
Yeah, he's my boy, man. He's a good dude.
Oh, so okay, so you're the interpreter. Like you're the interpreter. How can I understand you so well, but nobody can understand McGinn? Get this.
People always like say they can't understand me, so I don't know. I guess reverse role today, so
Yeah, no
it's
doubt.
working out.
I understand you
But man,
fine. Yeah. All right. So I'm sure as you get further in your fire service career, you're going to gather up. I know you have tons of influences, but you'll probably gather up some mentors. And look, spoiler alert: with you going through all these difficult processes, I'd imagine that you're going to pop up on the mentor list versus the mentee list several times as you move further down this process in your fire service. I don't want to call it career, but your time in the fire service. Um, the other question that I have, and this is a weird one for you because we don't have too many young young in the fire service guys on, but it's if you were to go back and give yourself advice before you entered the volunteer service, before you walked into the fire station and put in your application to, get some gear and start doing some training, what would you tell yourself if you had to do it all over again that would help set you up, uh, I don't want to say for success because you've already very successful, but made your path better? What would you tell yourself?
I think ultimately I would, tell myself not to expect change to happen overnight within like an organization or something like that, or a culture. I was very passionate out the gate, as far as like pushing it into the department, trying to, establish this culture of like physical fitness and just brotherhood and all this and that in our department. And not because there was a lot of days where I was like really upset, like, man, what the heck, dude? Like, nothing's changing. And it definitely caused some hardship on my part as far as getting aggravated and mad about it. But I would say definitely to have more patience.
Yeah. Any process, I mean, we hear Rob Fisher say it all the time, right? 10 pounds of pressure, 100% of the time.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I love saying.
there's another one. I don't even remember who it was. If somebody text me if you remember who said it, but anything that you invest in, make sure that you're going to invest in it for a decade. Anything that you're going
Yeah,
to like, whatever, if you want to change whatever the search culture or the whatever culture, make sure when you start down that process that you're committed for 10 years to reemphasize this is a long-term process. And I
yeah,
love that because it helps me reframe my vision or helps keep me motivated so that I don't get frustrated. Why didn't this change today? It needs to change today, and that's just not the reality of how things happen. So,
that with also we sit out in engine bay and talk crap on how everything's ran poorly and all this and that. But ultimately, whenever you do have issues that are going on in the department, is having a ultimately is having a solution to the problem and then bringing that up, you know, versus just, being out there just bullcrapping about everything that's going bad, not changing anything, but just ultimately creating a destructive culture within the department.
correct, and that gets said all the time by fire chiefs often. Don't bring me the Don't just bring me the problem. Bring me a
Yeah,
solution.
solution.
Yeah, bring the solution. Absolutely true. And I've had success in that. That is one of the things that, once again, not my podcast, but I've had problems and brought solutions, and some of those solutions have worked. Specifically one for sure, but that did work. Hey, I have something for this, and they said, "Yeah, go with it." And it's done very well. So, um what what we're going to do is finish up with any final thoughts that you might have, anything that you want to cover that we didn't get to that you think we might have missed.
No, for the most part, man, I think we've captured everything that I wanted to talk about. I say ultimately, especially if it's like a volunteer or something like that out there that does listen to this. I mean, like, don't limit yourself. or even a career guy, I mean, don't limit yourself. You know, there's so get outside of your department and train. There's so many great people that you'll meet, um, and then you'll be able to test yourself also, especially if you sign up for one of the programs. And then ultimately, all that does is just prepares you for, you know, the worst could be possibly the worst day of your life or somebody else's life. Ultimately, be successful in whatever it may be.
Yeah. Great stuff. I
And
think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
then life is short. Don't limit yourself.
Yes, completely agree. Completely agree. Probably, man. Preston does a thing where, and obviously we're not going to do it today, but I might rip him off completely. Where he ends his podcast, and he says, "Hey, I'm giving you the floor, and then I'm not going to say another word," and then it just ends on a hard out. I really like it, but I'm gonna have to call him first and say, "Hey, man, let me steal that from you before I actually start doing it, because I don't want him to hear it and go, he stole that from me." So we're gonna have a
Check the
conversation. Say it again.
copyright check the copyright on it.
Yeah, check the copyright. It's a good idea. I love it, but I'm gonna have to go to him and let him know, like, hey man, it's good, and I might take it from you. Please let me take it. Um, Gavin, once again, just kind of tying the knot on this thing. I appreciate you coming on. I know you were once again very hesitant. You were not scratching for the limelight. Me and Preston offered you a spot, and I called you and said, "Hey, has Preston or I texted you and said, "Hey, has Preston offered you a spot yet?" And he's like, "We had a conversation, but not yet." And I was like, "Man, come on." You were very resistant to come on because you're a humble individual. Appreciate that about you, but I think you're an absolute dog, especially coming from the volunteer side. Thank you for spending some time with us, sharing your thoughts on the fire service, family, all of those different things. And stay in touch, man. I have a feeling this is not going to be the last one that you're going to do. If I had to make a guess, somebody's going to probably call you and have you back on. So thank you, man.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I enjoyed it. And if anybody ever wants to reach out to me or anything like that, you can find me on Facebook. So
Yeah.
shoot me a message or something like that. Friend request. I'll definitely have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I could, that's on me. That's bad hosting. Usually I say, hey, if anybody wants to reach out to you, how could they do it? I'm glad you covered me right there, though. If you maybe there's a
Yeah,
co-host spot opening up, and I'll might pull you in. So, all right,
yeah,
Gavin, I got to go. We got to go take care of the kids and get all kind of family life stuff. I'm sure you're right there too. So once again, I appreciate your time and stay in touch, man.
yeah. Absolutely appreciate it, brother.
Yes, sir. Later.